Very weird.
All right, welcome back to the Countertop podcast, where we kind of bring around and bring topics to the table. Each of us will can talk about a million random things. It can be something specific to what's going on in the world. This is going to be our second episode, so if you haven't seen the other one already, please make sure to go back and see it. We're on a bunch of different streaming sites, Spotify, iTunes. Those are probably the two major ones, but all the other ones as well. We do have a YouTube channel and a Twitter, so please make sure to go follow if you are into any of those.
You're on Twitter?
Yeah, gotta make a footprint.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Oh,
so I'm gonna kind of start off with the second episode. We'll do this each time, but kind of housekeeping. Anyone have any further discussion on something we talked about last week, or things that we may need to retract and go back on?
Nothing from me.
no, I honestly haven't looked at any of my topics.
All right. Well, I'll jump in. I'll just throw out the first topic. This is kind of more real world, what's going on in the world right now. And I kind of thought it was an interesting topic to kind of touch base on. But for you gamers that may be listening, the Nvidia 3080 launch that happened this week. Kind of want to talk about what you got. Everyone's thoughts are, one, I don't think they did it well. With just how it ended up going down. But a big thing I think that is interesting is the bot perspective.
Yeah.
Where there's a site, and I was actually doing a little bit of research, and I'll have to find the site name, but there's actually a site that you can sign up for. It's like $75 a month that puts you in places in line for those things. And it actually started with the shoe culture for the shoe collectors. And that's kind of where it came from and how it ended up happening. So basically, it's $75. You sign up, basically reserves your spot in line. I think it's interesting because from that aspect, it's more unique items. You know, there's shoe collections out there that they may release 100 shoes altogether. Where Nvidia, in this case,
The site is called Bounce Alert.
yeah, Bounce Alert. That's it, exactly. And so I thought it was kind of interesting that it's kind of venturing over into the gaming world. And I don't think we've seen this as bad as it's been until now. But then also you think about coronavirus and everybody's at home and
Supply chain impacts of it.
yeah, exactly. And so I wonder, one, from a standpoint of people are buying more things online where before they may have just gone down to Best Buy, as well as implications on not having as much supply as well. So I just kind of want to get your guys' aspect on the Bounce Alert site, because part of it, I think it started in a good concept and a good way, but then also is kind of transformed how we buy things. And I don't know if that's hurting the business, because in a week or 2 weeks from now, there's going to be more stock. And then also you have the counterpart of that, of being the eBay sellers that are charging $1,500 for this $800 card. The scalpers, where that's illegal in ticket sales for sports, but is it going to become illegal for online? How does that work? And what are your guys' thoughts on all of that?
I think it's an interesting aspect, and the scalping thing is what I was going to bring up. It's great in theory system if everyone knows about it and everyone's able to get themselves on the list, but at the same time, on that side of the coin, if everyone gets on the list, it's the same as any old pre-order site. You are just going through a different application to place your order.
Yeah.
I think the resellers and scalpers are going to exist no matter where this space is that you do pre-orders, because they're obviously going to know about the technology just as well as everyone else. You're going to have the same people making 16 different accounts, getting 16 different systems to resell them.
Yeah.
But do you think that, Ray, it's amplified by the fact that people are offering services for them to make their lives easier?
I think it is, to a point, because it is harder if you have to do an in-person pre-order, or if there are
Right.
pre-orders and you just have to go in person to buy one. Obviously, it's going to be.
Do you
harder
remember
for
the
them to
midnight
get
releases at GameStop?
Yeah,
You know, that kind of shit.
Yeah, and I know people used to go and bring a bunch of people with them that were willing to do it with them, who had no interest in the game or system
Right.
or whatever was
Yeah,
coming out.
absolutely.
They'd do the same thing. You know, they'd buy multiple of them, and they'd be up on eBay within a week. But
Right, but they had to do the time, right?
yeah,
The human
and it was a
capital
lot
was
more.
spent.
Yeah, a lot more legwork, a lot more work in that route. So this definitely makes it easier.
Yeah, I know. Have you guys ever? It's not to change topics at all, but have you ever heard of these things called Funko Pops?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so I collected those for a period of time, and they had certain conventions had releases that went to different retailers and things like that, and very much so that scalping exists in that kind of collection trade as well, except for they had online scalpers as well, where as soon as the thing dropped off, everything was gone, and then you had to go wait in line at the store, and then even when you were at the store, you only had limited purchases of those items. And it's really interesting to see because I guess what I'm jaded about is that the performance numbers that came out after testing on the 3080s really weren't that great.
Yeah. The
I think it's
double 2080 Ti performance numbers that they threw out, they had to, at least on the Linus Tech Tips video I was watching, at least they said they reached out to Nvidia for a statement, and they clarified that it was only running RTX on Minecraft and Quake, which were two RTX optimized titles.
Right.
So of course, when you have something that has more, whatever the cores are for RTX, but it's got more RTX power, of course it's going to perform double to the 2080 Ti.
Yeah. Well, kind of spinning back to like the scalping for those Funko Pops.
Yeah.
With those limited releases, though, was it there was only so many in existence? Where
Yeah,
I think
absolutely. I made a couple $100 on some. I bought them for $14.
Oh, you're part of the problem. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I got some of those. Yeah, you can switch them around, and the reason I got out of them is because we stopped collecting, and so when you go to sell them later because of the scarcity of the items, yeah, they're totally worth more. Mm-hmm. And some of the things that you bought for $9 at the storefront, I waited in line. But yeah, I've gotten 300% returns on those all the time.
And I think that's what I think the big thing for everybody probably having a problem with all of this is it's Nvidia. The expectation to have enough stock for some degree. Like I was looking on Twitter, I was looking in like Reddit posts. It doesn't seem like very many people got a physical purchase.
Oh,
yeah.
And some of those still aren't confirmed today that they're actually going to get shipped. That's what's crazy to me with this whole scalping and all of that is, the release of how many they did, it just didn't seem that extreme.
But it also doesn't account for all the manufacturers, right? So like Gigabyte just announced that they were running their cards, and so it was NVIDIA only on launch. But I mean, we have so many other manufacturers that are working on that technology that are partnering with NVIDIA. It was only just the first launch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like just chill out.
Even those partner cards, it was only their embargo was lifted 24 hours after NVIDIA's. So you've got the NVIDIA pre-order, and then literally 24 to 48 hours later, you've got 5 other manufacturer cards that are also available for pre-order. But I haven't seen numbers on those. Everyone is wrapped around the whole NVIDIA situation. I don't know if the same thing is happening with those partner cards or if they haven't made them available yet, even though they were supposed to be.
I think I've seen 1 or 2 videos on it, and it seemed like they're not doing, it's a little bit better than the Founders Edition, but not by much, and it's in certain categories. So,
well, everyone should just chill out because they got a Founders Edition, and 6 months later they had the Super Edition. So just chill. You're gonna get the better one later.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's going to be the case because it almost seems like with this launch, NVIDIA is trying to simplify their lineup. That way, you don't have the 1080 Ti, and then you have the 1070 Super, the 1070 Ti's, and then the 1070 OCs, which is just an overclocked regular 1070 card. I think they're trying to get rid of some of that, and I think they're going to have the 3070, the 3080, and the 3090. Maybe in a year we'll see a 3070 and maybe Ti versions of those, but it seems like they're trying to simplify that. I also think they're trying to bridge that gap between the third-party cards and them because this Founders Edition is a huge step up over previous Founders Editions in cooling and performance and power and everything.
I will add to it. I don't know if you guys had heard, but there was also, and I don't know if this is confirmed or not, but I've heard it from multiple sources of the person that actually ended up building a bot to bid on all of the eBay scalped cards.
Yep, I saw that on Reddit too.
And basically pushed the bid so high, knowing that he's not going to pay. And now I guess some of the buyers are actually having to bid against them, or sellers are actually having to bid against themselves, so that they don't have to go through the whole claim process with eBay, because the claim process takes like 4 or 5 days. You can't repost it right away. All of the semantics with that. So I thought that was kind of interesting, like kind of the white knight out of all of it, to helping the situation, but then also hindering it for some people that were willing to pay that $1,500.
Yeah, but those people who are willing to pay $1,500 can go to hell.
That's true.
I mean, it's all, if you're going to tout capitalism, right?
Yeah.
Then you've got to realize supply and demand. And if supply is low and demand is high, then by God, they're entitled to receive the,
Yeah.
And
I think people are willing to pay that premium to be an early adopter. Like, it's always been that way in tech, and even in like hype beast culture, like you were talking about with the shoes. There's a reason Supreme has lines up before.
So I never understood Supreme. I never have.
It's really just the branding. It just became, the in fashion, and it became unique, and they kind of adopted the shoe culture mentality where it was limited releases and unique items, and it just
Do you guys see there's a Netflix movie coming out about shoes?
No.
Yeah, there's a Netflix movie specifically about shoe. I don't know, limited release catching whatever. So I'm not gonna get on Netflix again. I'm just gonna say there's a movie about shoes.
Yeah, the shoe culture is it's nuts. It's I guess it's like anything, but the shoe club conventions, and I have a buddy that goes to Goodwill and buys these Jordans that are worn, but he makes major profit on them just because it's something that is so unique to collect. So. But yeah, no, I thought it was all just kind of interesting how it all went down, and
This show is called Sneakerheads, by the way.
I'm not going to get into Netflix, goes on to Netflix and searches what it is.
So my topic actually kind of ties into some of this. It's not the same 3080 debacle, but it has to do with the whole PS5 pre-order issues. And I feel like the way Nvidia handled it is almost better than the way Sony's been handling this whole issue about they have a set date that these pre-orders are supposed to come out, and then there's a tweet less than 24 hours prior to that said, oh, here's the link, and here's all these retailers that are accepting pre-orders now, and they actually sold out before the official pre-order release date. And then their fix I saw this morning was another tweet saying that there was going to be more stock available and they were going to do another wave of pre-orders, but there was no set date for that. No one knows when it's going to be released or if there's going to be a heads up this time so people can actually be there at the specified time to put in their pre-orders. And so when we talk about the whole scalping situation, I don't know if that is a good deterrent for scalpers. If you just out of the blue release this pre-order and people jump on it that actually want the product, it actually might be a little bit better. But like I said before, scalpers are going to dominate any space, so there's going to be a handful of them that see that tweet anyway and go out and do the same thing, place a bunch of pre-orders on these systems. But
are you a PlayStation or Xbox guy, right?
I was an Xbox guy prior to PC, but I've always bounced back and forth between both since I was a kid. So it really depends on the exclusive titles that are coming out for the system.
And Xbox came out and said they're not doing exclusive titles. That's not their market space. They're going to do budget. And I was really shocked when PlayStation said they were going to do exclusives pretty much as the mainstay, but then their price point came out identical to Xbox, and you go, well, how can you have a budget platform that's identical to the premium platform with the exclusive titles?
Yeah,
it's really interesting.
It is.
That whole pre-order, the whole pre-order mess, it just, I don't know. Seeing companies do that, it's almost frustrating because I think was there a game that recently had a pre-order that flopped, or there was something happened?
Name one. They all flop on pre-order. They don't release alpha anymore.
Well, there was a huge dilemma or issue. I can't remember what game that was. But there was something like that ended up happening where it was you paid all this money. Wasn't it? It was the Earth game, the spaceship.
Talk about like No Man's Sky.
Yeah, No Man's Sky.
Issue? Yeah.
Where it was just
that was a little bit different though, because that was a game hyped up on its playability and like all these different features that it had, and then it was really released, and it just wasn't what they had explained.
Yeah, the
yeah.
generation.
I just think it gives the ability to fluff the numbers, and it's the same thing with Nvidia. Is like if we didn't have these YouTube or these channels reviewing these cards as they get sent out, everyone would have gone out and bought one, going, "I'm going to get 2 times as much power out of this." Than And
that's what I was going to bring up earlier too when you were talking about it. Is some of that responsibility does fall on Nvidia. And
totally.
they hyped up this card so much that they sold out, and now all of a sudden all these reviews are coming out, and I wonder how many people got in, if they're even getting the cards yet, like you said, how many have shipped out. But I wonder how many people are now disappointed in that performance. I think either way it's a huge upgrade, but I know people are still going to be disappointed that they're not getting double 2080 Ti performance for $700.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like, what's the point? You look at the individual titles that release, and not to mention, the CPU bottleneck between Intel and AMD was shown that, the 3080, I guess 3080 because 3090 has come out, but 3080, and we've talked about this topic for too long, I understand, we need to move forward, but it had to do specifically with 4K performance. And someone who has a 4K monitor right there and a 2K monitor right here, it's really interesting to go, it's the bottleneck isn't the CPU, the bottleneck or the GPU. It's actually the CPU and which one you have. And so your double performance on 1 or 2 individual titles is really linked to your CPU, not the GPU you upgrade to. Because I got a 2080 with ray tracing, and I run all of those ray tracing titles, and it's fine with the 7-year-old 2011 V3 CPU. It's whatever, it works.
Yeah. No,
I might get 15 frames if I upgrade, but I really need to upgrade my CPU at this point to actually take advantage of it.
Yeah.
I guess depending on people's systems, like you said, though, even 15 frames on a 4K title is the difference between not playable and playable. So if it's worth the $700 to you to get the latest and greatest, and the technology that they're using to optimize the memory that's on board the graphics cards by utilizing the SSD, which is one of Xbox.
Oh my God, Unreal Engine, right? Yes, yes.
Most games aren't even optimized for that.
No,
now, so
it'll be a year.
It'll be interesting to see when they start doing firmware upgrades and start bringing that kind of technology in. Are we actually going to see double performance of the 2080 Ti? Then all of a sudden, a year from now, that upgrade makes way more sense at $700 than it does right now.
Right. Absolutely.
And I know AMD's graphics cards have also always been the same way. They are very firmware reliant on getting bugs fixed throughout the first 6 months of launch. So I wonder if we're going to see that with this card as well.
So full disclosure, I develop on Unreal Engine, and I typically
shots fired.
No. So here's the weird thing, right? Like developing on Unreal Engine makes a lot of sense for the developer, not a lot of sense for the customer. But Unreal Engine, like seriously, their marketplace, the things they give away, their overall platform for development, I moved from Unity over to Unreal. I like it. That all said, as someone who plays games, Unreal bad, right? Let's paraphrase it. But what's really interesting is that with the SSD ability to render, they call it LEDs, right? Level of details for the individual models that, before you turn around the corner, how much of your screen space it needs to be taken up before you start developing the model details. That is really, really interesting for the next wave because that is driven by the game engine, not the graphics card.
Yeah.
And so what you're saying is damn right, Ray, is that this may be cool. We may not see the benefits now, but until that architecture is fully realized by the game engines that we're utilizing, then we're just going to have to sit tight. And there's no fucking point to buy that shit at $1,500 now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just wait 6 months because even PS5 doesn't have any titles that is fully utilizing at this point.
Yeah.
And Xbox, no, not even close.
Yeah.
But that's the point, is the SSD's ability to communicate to the game engine to articulate how it should load the level of details in the individual models to optimize performance. That way you could stream more of those models versus having to stop and have loading screen.
Yeah.
I think a lot of this technology in itself, as soon as that stuff does get optimized, is going to change the game again for computer builds, because now all of a sudden you're going to have to take CPU, memory, graphics cards, and SSD availability into account. And
really, you notice how RAM is not talked about?
Yeah.
It's not.
That's why I overbought.
Yeah, I'm sitting here with 32 gigs. What the fuck did that help?
Sitting here with 64 gigs. Oops.
Yeah.
In your case, again, it's going to be interesting to see in a year, because I don't remember the specs on your build, but is it PCIe 4?
Yeah, it is.
In a year from now, is DDR5 going to be the new benchmark for motherboard RAM? All of a sudden, you're going to be outdated on that front.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that.
I don't think they would.
We're talking about a minuscule improvement in performance also, so it's not going to be a big deal at that point.
Yeah.
Especially if we're using SSDs to render and RAM starts to take a backseat to, basic computer functions instead of all of this game-related stuff that has to happen.
But I think we could all agree it's a really cool time for nerds like us to go, where does the bottleneck? And as we see it transition from, RAM, right? Because RAM used to be the bottleneck.
Yep.
Now we see the CPU is actually the bottleneck. Even with the most up-to-date cards, it's still falling back to the CPU. So, I mean, it does transition to my other topic, though.
Well, before you go,
okay,
because I just want to kind of, from both your, what we've talked about is how does Nvidia, how does Ps5 change their pre-order? Like, is there a way to improve that?
I think it would be interesting to see a hybrid model where you do an online pre-order and you make them available online, but you also have retailer, and I guess a lot of that's up to the retailer too, but you have some retailer exclusives where you've got to have people come in and get these things. And I get it's COVID right now, but it's not going to be around forever. I don't think it's necessary. Like, online shopping is going to dictate the market, but I think a lot of that still needs to be available physically for some of these people that are willing to go out and wait in line for them also.
I would say, too, to add to that you can do a digital release on pre-order, but what might be beneficial to do is have a sign-up process, a random number assignment to those who are open to closed betas, as we see right now, where you don't have competition for closed betas because they have an individual user number, right? Like, you don't have someone who has 15 codes to the new Call of Duty, whatever,
Cold War.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That pre-order. You don't have people who are going spamming trying to get those codes. They wait for that draw to come through. And if you have a lottery function to it, yes, there are going to be losers, but there are going to be less losers.
Yeah. And I think that, from a public standpoint and the company's kind of, forward-facing front, I feel like that's a better approach than getting blasted on Twitter because of what's happened now, where in a lottery, it's like, okay, everyone understands.
It's the luck of the draw.
Exactly.
It's easier for them, too, from a
totally
handling standpoint. Then they don't have these claims of underperforming or under-delivering on stock and stuff like that.
And you don't have to have those safeguards against bots. Yes, you're going to have a lot of bot contributing to just signing up for the lottery, but in the end, if you have 1 million participants in the lottery and you select 200,000 of them to receive, that's still going to be better for the consumer, I feel.
Yeah.
But certainly don't negate brick and mortar, because brick and mortar standing in line is still
your best chance.
I think it's excitement. I always remember my fondest memories of standing in line waiting for a midnight release. I enjoyed it a lot.
It just depends what the weather is outside.
True. My last midnight release, unfortunately, was during my professional career, and I was on call during the time. But it was Battlefield 2 was my last midnight release. Since then, fuck it.
Yeah,
I'm not even an early adopter anymore these days, so
yeah,
there is some excitement to it, but I'm in the camp that I would prefer to wait 6 months to a year anyway to see where those optimizations go. I've always been
totally.
like that, so.
Yeah.
you get burned on a lot of shit anymore. And
Yeah.
it's weird the model that exists for video games right now.
Yeah. It's interesting.
No, it's definitely, it'll be interesting. And then the VR that just got announced, and this kind of ties into your topic, Tanner. But even, kind of rolls into that we're in a weird stage of lots of growth. So I'll pass it off to you.
Yeah, so I'm a VR nut. I actually missed the start of this podcast because I was playing VR. So,
we'll edit you in.
Yeah, no, I do it about every day, and I actually have the Oculus Quest, and I have a Valve Index. And one of the really interesting things that's coming up is, one, from a VR perspective, as someone who doesn't have a Facebook account, I don't like Oculus. Because in the near future, Oculus is actually, their Oculus accounts are phasing out. Facebook is going to take over. You're going to have a Facebook account to use the Oculus Quest number 2, which just got announced. One of the things that they're looking to do is integrate your office space in allowing your infinite number of displays to allow as you move around your environment to increase productivity. Yes and no, right? So if you were able to put on a headset and look around your environment and use, actually it's really interesting because Quest allows you to do finger tracking versus controllers. But, could you type on a fictitious keyboard and have all the displays around you, X, Y, Z coordinates as much as you want? Do you think that would increase productivity? Is really where I wanted to talk to you two about is do you think throwing on a headset, sitting in a chair, and having those non-restricted number of displays to conduct work, do you think that would actually increase productivity?
I think after a learning curve, it would for a lot of people, but I mean,
I think it's
getting into philosophical sides of things. I think people need the breaks during the day, and I think they need interaction with people, which it's shifting a little bit with COVID and stuff like that. But I don't know. I mean, at the fundamental basis of it, I do think it would increase productivity. It just depends on how far people are willing to push it.
And I think it's, I think the biggest thing where productivity would kind of falter is the headset, wearing that. They're not super comfortable. They're not, perfectly set for your eyes. There's some limitations there. So I feel like that for me, I don't think I could wear that for 8 hours a day and still be productive, where I'm like, okay, my neck hurts. But from a, say from me or some other technical people that may be listening, like jumping between screens and having dual monitors, that's become second nature. So I feel like if you were to expand that to a plethora of, whiteboards that you can have, I think it's possible. For me, I think there would definitely be challenges, no keyboard, that pushback, and all of that would definitely take some time to get to. And, hopefully this comes around soon enough that I can be on the learning curve of it and not the back end where my future grandkids are telling me what to do.
Okay, boomer.
Yeah, exactly. But no.
Bringing up work from home again, though, I think it is a huge boom for people if businesses start trending in that direction where they let people work from home more. I know as soon as all of this hit, they had to send us home from our big office buildings at work, and people had to start working from home within a week's notice. A lot of people don't have room at home to have a nice office setup or anything like that. So something like VR, where you could have a nice empty workspace that's large, can really benefit people that don't necessarily have a home office or anything like that as far as their productivity. Because I know a lot of people I work with went from the 2 screens that we have at home to a single screen or just a laptop screen, which is a huge, and what we do, at least I utilize all the real estate on my screens every day that I work. So if I had to go the opposite direction from 2 screens to 1, it would definitely cut my productivity. So I think in this case, instead of people having to cut down like that, if they could expand into more, it would definitely help.
it's odd because then you actually have to get. What I think is interesting is like right now we picked up after the pandemic on or Teams meetings or other things that allowed us to have face-to-face time. And having been someone who's been heavily involved in Mozilla Hubs, which is a avatar-driven communal meeting space to, meet, right? Concern, talk, whiteboards, or whatever you want to do. It would be fine to replace the individual meeting, but I don't know if putting on a headset to replace even someone who does it every single day to replace screens is really what I'm after in the VR experience because it's not immersive. It's not memorable and it's not convenient in terms of let me just use my fingers arbitrarily to look and I can look over here, but that's the same thing I'm doing. But you have to then think of from Facebook's marketing standpoint, if they can offer you the Quest 2 is somewhere around the $400 mark. If they can offer you $400 to have unlimited monitors, does that present a real good opportunity for working from home? Whereas like folks like us who have multiple monitors who paid for it, it's not really what we're not talking apples to apples. They're providing us a $400 solution, multiple monitors, and that's something we can't deliver even with multiple like graphics cards we're talking now.
I still think the quality, is not going to be there. Staring at VR, I just don't see that as a, if that's what Facebook's pushing and that's where they're going. I still would rather stare at 2 or 3 screens all day long than get a 30 frames per second on my Excel spreadsheet, and my blurry vision and people with glasses, Ray, I'm sure you got to get the special specs that change that out every 6 months or wherever someone's eyes are going. I think there's a benefit, but then I guarantee there's so much downside just physically.
So the Quest 2 right now features a 90 hertz 1080 32 by 1920 pixel per eye, but it's on it's on a singular LCD screen, which it cheats the IDP that you were talking about later, which is the distance between your actual pupils. That was a long sentence to say without breathing. But anyway, so the resolution is getting better. And if you can assume 1080p on each individual eye with unlimited 360 surroundings on a stationary position with the Oculus Quest 2 and non-controller function on a keyboard, they've got a pretty damn good model.
I think it's definitely there. I'll go for it, Ray.
It also depends on socioeconomic classes and stuff like that you're looking at. This could be a huge step up for someone who isn't going to have access during times like this, especially to go out and buy multiple monitors. Stuff like that. If you could buy a single $400 device that's going to future-proof you to a point, and it gets you better quality than a $30 Amazon webcam is going to get you, and a $50 1080p monitor.
Yeah, I guess I didn't think of it from that standpoint. Even a employer buying that versus two $200 Amazon monitors. I don't know. It's hard to picture. I see the concept. I think concept's great because I think it will eventually be there. I think the coronavirus has probably sped that process. You see California and a lot of these IT companies are now just pushing this is no office. This is just the new norm. So I definitely see it as a possibility. I think we're tech-wise are a little bit behind on, if it was glasses, I would say, or, ski goggles, let's say, which I know it's close to that, but where it's just that and it's more comfortable.
I think it also would have to start somewhere to get to that point too.
Yeah.
You're never going to have a fully polished product come out at the beginning.
Yeah.
So eventually, I'm sure this is going to move to something like Google Glasses or something like that. It's going to end up at that form factor, or at the very least, more comfortable to wear for long periods of time. If this actually is a viable technology that companies start picking up on.
That's an interesting one. I've never thought about it enough that it's that close to, I'm still thinking 10 years out, but if they're coming up with it, and what is this, an article that you read, or is this, they have it now?
Yeah, so it came out September 16th, was released on Oculus.com in terms of the introducing Oculus 2. And then if you look at an article from VentureBeat.com, has to do about Infinite Oculus Office with Logitech keyboard and adjustable pass-through. And so one of the things that's really interesting right now is that we currently, in my development on the Oculus Quest, we use pass-through and the hand tracking features to one is really interesting. So if you're in a corporate setting and you're talking about how to really address inclusion and diversity, right? Which is not a topic I want to get into now. But one of the things that Oculus does really well is that they allow the hands from the VR user to be passed through and transparent, yet finger tracking. And so when you're developing for diversity and inclusion, you're allowed to have opaque hands that track around keyboards, inputs, functions, movements, scrolling through different title screens and things like that. It's really a plus for like a enterprise solution, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want to go too far off, but yes, currently you can use your hands without controllers in an Oculus Quest 1 to hit keyboard functions and scroll around and create a couple different panels. The problem is that as of last month, I believe, they introduced that Oculus is going away and it's all going to be Facebook. Now, Oculus for Business is still separate. You're not going to need a Facebook profile for your individual employees to connect to it. However, if you and I want to utilize these functions, it's going to require a Facebook profile.
Yeah,
I totally didn't answer your question. I just wanted to give more information.
I don't like that aspect of it.
No, it sucks.
It seems like they're going to monopolize the space.
Well, they just want your data. That's all it is.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It ends up just being a data farming scheme. I mean, it can bring value to some people, but in their eyes, they don't care as much about that as they just do getting people's data. That's their biggest moneymaker. So.
Well, isn't this the first time they're branching out? Well, not say first time, but in a company that is different than what they were. Is they need their hands in it a little bit more than where it's not a organic build from them.
So they purchased Oculus.
Yeah.
And then they had full intentions when at the time of purchase, Facebook said Oculus users will not be required to use Facebook. That was a demonstrative statement that was provided at the time of purchase. Now that was backtracked, and that's what caused the feud.
Has anyone tried to get their refund yet? Because they're going back on it.
As someone who's got one sitting right there,
try it.
If they were required me to have a Facebook profile, it just would go to the
collect us.
Really, it's not going to happen. I mean, the resolution is really shit compared to the index anyway. So I don't game on a Quest anyway. It's fucking trivial bullshit. Not to be mean, it's so inadequate. It's like looking at a CRTV, kind of just really crappy pixelated bullshit. It's nice to optimize. So like when you're building for games and doing like game jams, it's nice to have that as being what you're trying to shoot for, so everyone can be involved. But when you're playing with it, compared to other games, and you try and use the same games on Quest, like the first resolution, now the second one's got slightly update. Whatever. It's not for gamers. It's for entry market folks who only want to spend a couple $100s to try and have VR as a parlor trick, right? It's something you share with the family, and it works for that.
Yeah.
It really does. Like the hands-free mobile thing, cool. It works. And then for an enterprise solution, not having to have a gaming PC, yeah, there's a market for that. Absolutely. But for someone who has a gaming PC and wants a VR experience, tethered is always better.
Yeah.
Quote.
Well, we're going to hold you to that. No, while you were using the restroom, I did bring up, the employer actually buying these in replace of a screen for your employees. Do you think that from, your experience in the professional world, that would be a viable option down the road?
Yes.
As a screen replacement?
Absolutely.
I think not only screen replacement, but you can then pack more people. Maybe not now, but you could theoretically pack more people into an office or something like that, because you don't need as much desk space.
That's true. Depends how much room for activities you need.
No, it's really 100% a viable solution, because you can provide a couple of different things with VR. Is why I'm so passionate about it, is that, say you just left a meeting and you have 5 minutes before your next conference call. What would you like to do? You can do a bio break, right? Those are needed. But if you don't need one, how would you like to go to the Everest Mountains, right? Go to Nepal, look up there. How would you like to just go and let off some steam? Or let's do a round of Beat Saber quick in 3 minutes and 24 seconds. Like, these are things that provide not only a cognitive brain stimulant, but also an escape from, the normal drab of your office environment. And I think it's needed, but it's also something that's not being offered currently. And one of the things that, I did a startup early on about using, VR to increase collaborations among businesses. And one of the things that the co-founder often fantasized about was like, hey, he's got back problems. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could do all of your daily work while on an inverted table? It's like the freedom that it offers you to alleviate strains of the body, ergonomics, and whatever else, in terms of still being able to perform, it is amazing. It's a tech that I believe in, and I think it's going to be long term. So yes, I think it can replace monitors. I think it can replace, being like the ruralization of employees, right? Everyone's trying to bring in our age folks to work in enterprises inside of cities because of the attractions that it provides outside of the normal business work. But really, that's not what people are after. We see that during COVID, and I think that's going to be a long-term change that we're going to have to actually realize in VR development and workspace.
It's kind of scary all at the same time that this is, the interaction between people could start to dwindle more and more, and coronavirus has spiked that for everybody,
and I think that's a whole other conversation.
Right.
The philosophical side of it is definitely, that would also weigh on people's decisions, but that's another hour-long conversation in itself.
Absolutely.
No, we are getting close to our cut time anyways, so I will kind of pass around for last thoughts if anyone has any. Tanner, I'll start with you.
Well, I have to say that I don't have anything.
You're not going to share what you're drinking?
I can't pronounce it, man. It's P2 Brazilian rum and a lime and some sugar.
Okay, next. Ray, any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I don't have anything.
Okay.
Pretty much covered everything.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for listening. We appreciate your support. Once again, we are on all the major platforms for podcasts, YouTube and Twitter. We'll continue to expand those, so please make sure to like, follow, comment wherever we are, and we appreciate your time.